occasion. But Kano International Airport is right here. And how many of you have ever heard of Kano, Nigeria? You all have. Do you remember when John Glenn orbited the Earth? The Earth. The first place that called in and said that he was overhead was the Canary Islands. And the second one was Kano, Nigeria. So you've all heard of it once, at least. You don't hear of it more than once from me. Kano, but up here in the northern part of Nigeria is the tribes were the Fulani and the Hausa. And they were the ruling tribes there. It doesn't mean they were the only people that lived there. But back then, I don't know now if the tribes are as important as they were then, but they probably are, because there's tribes all over the world. We hear about them often starting wars and causing trouble. And then the southern part of Nigeria starts right around in here. And this line here is where the Muslims came down and they conquered that part of the northern part of Nigeria and that whole northern part of Africa. And that went all the way across the African continent. Who can tell me what stopped the Muslims from going further? Come on, it was $1 million question once on TV, and I knew it. Well, our whole family did. It was the tsetse fly, T-S-E-T-S-E. And the fly bit the horses of the Muslims. The horses died, and they stopped right there. And we would see them every once in a while. They were little tiny flies, and they had crossed wings, and you didn't want them to bite you. Now, the Yoruba and the Igbo tribes, the Yoruba were on the west, and the Igbo, you're going to hear more about. They're called Igbo more now than Igbo. But they were on the east. And there's two very famous Milwaukeeans that are from these tribes. Can you tell me who they are? All right, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He was descended from the Yoruba tribes, and Giannis and Tankumbo, is that the way you say it? His mother was Igbo and his father was Yoruba. And they migrated from Nigeria to Greece, and I believe he was born there. But it's two very famous Milwaukeeans that we all know who they are, and they were from Nigeria. What exactly goes there? Okay, we landed in Nigeria, in Kano International Airport, and people from the northern Nigeria Teacher Education Project met us. And they were the ones that the University of Wisconsin had that group that gave the name, that project name. And it was funded by the Ford Foundation. It says founded, it should be funded. Funded by the Ford Foundation, so they paid all the money for it. And I don't know if the University of Wisconsin had this idea, or if the Ford Foundation had the idea of going in there and helping them. But it was a very good thing they did, because in 1960, Nigeria became independent of England, and they had no people that were educated enough, or very few people that were educated enough to fill all the positions that they needed filled. So there was still a lot of English there in 1965 when we landed. Now when we landed there, they opened the doors of the plane and we had to walk down the steps, and the heat and the dryness just hit you right front and center. It was so hot and dry, you just wanted to drink, just drink, because it's right south, actually, of the Sahara. The Sahara comes up almost to it, meet it. Now, the main crop in 1965 was the groundnut, or we call it peanuts. And they grew very well there in that dry soil, and it was their main export. And they put all the groundnuts in those bags, and then you can see in the background in this first picture how they build them up into pyramids and then covered them before they were sent out. And in Kano, this is the kind of mud huts they had. They were either oblong or square, and they had flat roofs. This is very different from the mud huts that were in the south where it rained. There the mud huts are generally round, not always, but generally round, and they have very thick thatched roofs to keep the rain off. And sometimes people that were a little wealthier would sand them down and paint them, so they looked pretty nice. But this is a very interesting picture because it shows you the mud huts and then the modern cement block buildings. Now, we were not going to stay in Kano that night. We were just picked up by some NNTEP officials, and we were going to end up in Kaduna. And this is the building that the NNTEP, this was their building, their office. And the offices were upstairs, and the downstairs they built apartments so that if any of the teachers came into Kaduna, they could stay in those apartments. And again, this is the Hausa tribe that stayed here, that lived here mainly. And our place that we were going, our destination was Bida. And here is a picture of, I don't know how well you can see this, but that was one time we flew into Bida, and so we took pictures, we took thousands of pictures. We have 1,000 left that survived all this time. So you can see it's very dry, the trees are stunted, and that is the Kingsway. I wanted to show you some of the places that we were able to shop. That was not in Bida. We didn't have that fancy a store, that Kingsway there, but that was in many of the cities across Nigeria, in the bigger cities, and it was in Kaduna, and we did a lot of shopping there. Now, we were not allowed to drive. This was a rule of the Ford Foundation. Even if we were in an accident, we were to get out of the car and leave, and before any people surrounded the car or the accident, if we were able to, And so they wanted the Nigerian drivers to handle that if that happened. Now, when we got to Bida, the first thing they did is took us to see our house. And this is our house. That happens to be me in the front. I was a little younger then. And that's our daughter, Mary. She was 4.5. And that's our gardener, Cece. That's the picture I had of our house. And the house was in the form of a T. And the long part of the T was from this side, and it was our boys' bedroom, and then there was a dining room, and then there was a long hallway with a bathroom off of it, and our daughter's bedroom off of it, and then the master bedroom on the end. And the short part of the T, I'm standing in front of it there, that's the living room. And then behind that is the dining room that lined up with the boys' bedroom. And then we had two kitchens. One kitchen was a gas stove kitchen, very small, and a few inadequate cupboards and a very inadequate refrigerator. They did get us better things later. And then the other kitchen was a wood stove kitchen. And then it had a large pantry with a door that you could lock, which I found I had to do. And then the big table that they could leave bread on. And they like to meet, usually the cooks all like to cook the bread in the wood oven. Now you can see the screens on the windows. Nobody but the Americans had screens on their windows. The British don't believe in them. They say they keep in more bugs than they keep out. And so they built us screens, but because the windows opened out, they had to build them in a box and put them up against the windows, and then I don't know how they attached them somehow, so that's what they did. Now this is an aerial Google view of Beta. My son wanted to see if he could find our house, and he did. This happens to be our house right here. You can see the red line going to it, and we know it's our house because there were 3 houses in a row, and we would happen to be on the secondary school campus. And so this whole part belonged to the secondary school, and the principal lived right next door to us, and his little girl played with Mary every day. And then this other one was a teacher. He was English, and he was a teacher at the secondary school. None of this other stuff was there, except these 3 houses this way and our 3 houses this way. But we can recognize this by this unique design or whatever way that road was built, because you could come at it this way or you could go down the road in this way. So it was a very unique place, but none of this was there. That was all just field. And then down the street, now there's our house, and we could walk this way down the street, but it was so hot. And here was the club. And we know it's the club because I put into the internet on the computer. I put in the Beta Club. That came up. And my son found it too. And you can see the tennis court behind. Now our tennis court was not like this. This is a hard court. I'll describe it later. And they took out this beautiful place that we called the club. And I'll describe that later too. And they have a 2-story club here. It's probably air conditioned, and it's more like a gym. Ours was nothing like a gym. And the next day, after they showed us the house, we were to hire our servants. Here's what I meant. I was dumbfounded. Our whole yard was filled with these men in caftans and regas, no women around, and all with these little hats on their heads. You'll see God if he comes. He's got my husband's hat on his head and his caftan.
What's a riga, please?
What?
What is a riga?
A riga is a long garment that they wear that's that's open, entirely open, and they have to wear another shirt underneath. A caftan is what you're going to see Scott in, and that's all sewn up. So they have to put it in over their head. They're all embroidered. They're gorgeous. They love clothes. And the women love clothes too. This happened to be a piece of fabric that I have. And I thought I'd just bring it, and you can see they have beautiful fabric. I don't know why they've never brought it, to the United States.
Rita, what brought you there?
What brought us there was the University of Wisconsin.
Okay.
They called up my husband and wanted him to fill in for one man who couldn't make it there. So they called him, and they actually called UWM, and they asked him if they knew anybody who knew anything about Africa. And they said, yeah, Earl Backlars. So that's how. So anyway, this is what I was faced with, and I thought, oh my word, all these Muslim men are going to be living in not living, but working in my house. And here's Aliu, he's the cook. Now he's the top dog as far as the servants go. And he doesn't look very pleasant there. We hired him, sort of against our will, but we hired him. He was a scoundrel, and you'll hear about all of his things that he does. But he was a good cook, which means a lot there. And he knew the basics of all the cooking and everything, and I'll tell you more about that. Then the second boy, I don't like that term, but that's the term that's used then anyway. The second boy was picked by Aliu, and his name was Mohammed. And then the gardener you met already, that was Cece. And then Asta became our babysitter for Mary, because I had to teach the other 3 kids their school. And so I was going to need a babysitter. And I wanted one that could speak and read and write English. And I found her. And of course, when she told me her name, she said, Asta. And I put down Asta. And then it was quite a few months later, she got sick, and I thought she had mumps. And Mary never had mumps. And so the other kids did, but anyway, I asked her her name, because if I wrote her a letter, she got into the hospital right away, taken care of, so she could get back to work. And she also probably got better health care by my writing a letter. One time I was at the hospital, and there was this great big group of men, and they said, all right, everybody with problem with their foot. Well, about 20 men had problems with their foot, and they just gave them one way to take care of it. So that's the way the health care was, sort of. But anyway, I asked Asta then what her name was. Spell it. E-S-T-H-E-R. And I said, Esther? And she said, yes, it's Esther. And I said, why didn't you correct me? She said, well, I like the Esther.
Oh.
So, and then I didn't tell you about Cece in the garden yet, did I?
No.
Okay, Cece was quite a character. And he said he knew how to plant vegetables. Vegetables were very hard to get. Now you'd think that they'd grow well there, but they just didn't. And so anyway, he started a garden, and we got him, and he also planted flowers, but mostly in pots. And I had them all inside that whole area in the front and things by the time we were there a little while. And we even had roses. And they all survived as long as they were well taken care of. But anyway, Cece planted this vegetable garden. And I told him, now you have to take care of it, and so he was listening, and we were just about ready to pick some of the vegetables. And that night, fire ants, I think that's what they're called, came through. They ate every single one, and even the sticks. So we had another thing that Cece did was he didn't sleep on our place. We had servants' quarters behind our house, but he didn't sleep there. He slept at home. And one night a snake slept with him. Bit his leg all up.
Oh.
So he ended up in the hospital, and we were told about it. And Earl went to see him, and he took him cigarettes. Oh, well, he was the king of the day. He sat up in bed so proud, and he was smoking his cigarettes in front of the other people, the patients, and he thought he was really big stuff. Now there were other families in Beta, well, there were other families in Nigeria. There were 7 cities and towns that they chose to put American teachers in. And, but there were 3 other families from Wisconsin in Beta. Now, one of the things about living there is that I was not, nor any spouse was not allowed to earn money. I mean, I wasn't going to have time anyway. I had to take care of the house and teach the kids and all this, so and handle those servants. And the other families from Wisconsin lived on the Teachers College campus, which was a little over a mile from where we lived. So we were kind of fortunate because we lived so close to the club, and we lived close to town too. And we were on the secondary campus. Now here's the club. I don't have a picture of the outside of it, unfortunately, but I will try to describe it to you. It was quite a large building, and it was 1 story, and it had a bar in the front. That was, oh, here he comes. He's even got sunglasses on.
What am I wearing?
You're wearing a caftan, and he even has, you can see the embroidery. They had pedal Singer sewing machines that did all this work. And a lot of them had them in multiple colors. And then he has pants on, and it also has all the decoration on the bottom of the pants. And then the pants are about this wide.
They really are. That's what took me so long. I thought there was a belt in these.
I told you to bring a belt.
I scrambled for a belt.
And the men made those hats. The women did not do that kind of work. The men made those hats. That's a little small on his big head.
That's gonna get bigger.
But they would sit and they'd be doing all this in fine embroidery. And it was all the men.
Very interesting.
All right. Are we good?
Yeah, you were very good.
All right.
Okay, so this is the club. I was describing it to you. It's part mud and part cement. And it had the bar, the front room was the bar, and then behind that was the snooker room. The snooker room is like pool. And it has a table with a felt liner. And the men warned those kids, don't you come into that snooker room. They were so afraid they'd rip the felt. And so the kids, kind of shuddered, but once in a while they'd sneak in anyway. But they were under almost threat of death if they hurt that snooker table. And here you can, the people, well, I was describing the place, excuse me. Then off the right side of the bar was a patio area, quite large, and that's where we had our chops. Now, chops means to eat. And the different nationalities would put on these chops. And then out the other side was the swimming pool with a large cement patio area. And don't think, oh, poor them, they had a swimming pool. Well, the swimming pool did not have a filter. So every week it had to be emptied and new water put in. Now, there wasn't always enough water to fully fill it, so it was that kind of a swimming pool. And then down from the swimming pool, further down the street, was the tennis court that you saw. But the tennis court then was made out of rolled anthill. It resembled a clay court. It was a very nice tennis court. But the anthills in Africa, or in Beta anyway, were 8 to 10 feet tall, and big, round things. And so they'd go and they just knock one of them over. They'd chase the queen out, and all the other ants would follow her. And then they'd pick up the sand. It was all filtered, nicely filtered. And they'd take it over and dump it on the tennis court, and then they'd roll it out. They had a nice roller. They'd roll it out, then paint the sides, the lines. So it worked very well, and we had a lot of fun on that tennis court. I guess I said it. Oh, and then all the people that lived there were families from England, Scotland, Ireland, Pakistan, the U.S., and Nigeria. And this couple we happened to take a picture of because they had just arrived not long after we did. And I think he was an engineer. And there we are sitting around the table. We were probably playing some game or something. I don't remember. It's funny, I can't remember it 50-some years ago. Now, the first week we were there, this was something that the servants did, especially the cook, and all the other families too. They'd invite you to something that was going on in their compound. And Aliu invited us to this baby naming ceremony. I think it was on the 5th day, it might have been the 7th. And so we went, but Earl had gone to his work at the school because that's the kind of person he was. He worked and worked and worked till everything was to his liking. And we got there, and none of the other families came either, so I don't know if they weren't invited or what. But anyway, there were these dancers there, and they were singing and dancing, and we were put in a place of honor and everything. And as they were singing, all of a sudden they started singing, "Ooh, baccalars, ooh, baccalars," and I thought, they're making fun of us. And it bothered me, of course. And pretty soon, Aliu went up and he started putting shillings on their sweaty foreheads, and the shillings, of course, stuck. And so then I realized we were supposed to be giving them money. I didn't bring any money. We were only there a week. I had not learned the, it was shillings and pounds, all English currency. I hadn't really learned it that much yet. And I don't even remember why I didn't have money with me, but I didn't. So I told the kids to get up and we left. And the next day I paid Oliver back the money. And he was probably very embarrassed because it's that kind of a relationship. If the cook, invites you to something, you're supposed to behave right. And if we never invited him anywhere, but he was supposed to act decent in the city, which he didn't always do. Now the second week we were there, Lee and Earl got sick. Earl's my husband. Lee and Earl got sick. And Lee was 12, and Earl was 33, I think. And we called the Pakistani doctor came, male Pakistani doctor, and he said that they had malaria and to start taking massive doses of chloroquine. And believe me, it's horrible stuff to take. I mean, they recommended that one person recommended that you take it for COVID. I thought, oh Lord, it's awful stuff. Every Sunday we took our chloroquine, and it got so that Mary would cry every Sunday morning. She'd cry all morning. And I was so affected by it. I couldn't see right. My eyes got all out of focus. It's awful stuff. And to this day, I can't drink quinine water. So anyway, they tried to figure out where on earth they caught the malaria, because we had taken chloroquine 2 weeks before we arrived in Nigeria. And so we shouldn't have gotten it. But they looked back, and we had gone through a few countries before we got there, and Israel was one of them. And we went through what you call Christian Israel. So it was sort of off the beaten path, you know, to Bethlehem and all these places. And they figured out that they got it there. Because that was right before we started to take, well, we had just started taking chloroquine. And so they got over it. It took a while, but a week or so, and they were feeling better. Now, the next thing that happened was I was so concerned about the health things because of the malaria, and that was really a dangerous thing because Lee was so young. The doctor didn't know if she was going to live. But I was watching Muhammad, and I was directing him to do things, you know, boil water, use bleach, do all these things for sanitation, and he wasn't doing them. And no matter how many times I told him, he didn't do them. So I got rid of him. I told him he had to go. And I went out and I hired Daliu. Daliu was his name, we call him Daliu. And I noticed that there was a lot of tension in the house, and mostly it was Aliu saying things to Daliu. And so I asked him, I said, what's going on here? Well, Aliu said, Muslims do not work with Christians. And I said, oh. And he said, Aliu is a Christian. And I said, well, you're working in my house, and I don't believe in that. So you're going to have to decide that you're going to have to work with him, because I want him here. And Daliu said, well, we'll ask the master when he gets home. When the master gets home, he will decide, because he's the head of the house. And I said, well, all right, we'll see. So Earl got home, and Aliu, I told him that we were having some problems. And Earl listened to it, and he said, well, no, he said, in our family, Rita's the head of the house, and I do the work outside the house. And he said, so you're going to either have to agree to live together, and we both told him about the melting pot of the United States, how everybody's from every country on earth almost, and they all work together. I mean, they don't even talk about it. I mean, it's just, you just work together. And so they stayed. So that was kind of the end of that. And then, in order to teach him more about this, Earl had maps wherever he went. I got out some maps, and one was of England, and one was Nigeria, the same one, about the same one there, and then the United States. And I said, this is who's been ruling your country for not centuries, but decades. And Nigeria is 4 times larger than England. And you have 4 times the population of England. And they were astounded. They had never heard this before. And then I said, and Nigeria is about the size of Texas, and I pointed out Texas. And I said, we're a very powerful country, and it isn't just because of our size, you know, but I said, the United States fits into the Sahara Desert alone. And 4 United States would fit inside Africa. And most people don't, maybe more do now, but very few people understood that. So they took it all in, and of course, they got along pretty well. Now, this is at the club again, and these are the Pakistani women. I don't know who these two are, I don't remember, but I remember this one very well. She was a medical doctor. And when you go to the hospital, sometimes you'd see her. And there they are up there with their children. I don't know why Mary, I'm not there, Mary's standing with them, but she liked to play with kids. And so she was playing with those kids. And again, there's the medical doctor, and that's her son right here, Wasim. I remember his name. I don't remember the parents' names. I just can't remember it. But like I said, she was a medical doctor, and he was a very handsome, tall man, and very sure of himself. And he was an engineer.
Trained where?
What?
Where was he trained?
Well, he was trained in Pakistan, I imagine. I don't know. But anyway, he was an engineer. And Mary and Wasim got along very well together. Wasim was a year older. And well, I was telling you about the father. The father, they said, was in the Olympics, and he won a award. I'm always going to look up and see if I can find it. But I don't know his name, but I think it was a javelin or something like that. So he was, as I said, he was a very sure of himself man. And it wasn't too much later, he started talking about Mary and Wasim becoming betrothed. Engaged. And we thought it was totally ridiculous. Our little Mary was going to be coming, oh. So anyway, he just kept it up and kept it up and kept it up. And then he started telling us, this was about 5 months later, and he told us, he said, well, we'll be going home soon to Pakistan on our leave. And he said, we could take Mary with us, and she can see what Pakistan is like. Then when we come back, it won't be too many months, and you'll be going to the United States, and you can take Wasim, and he can see what the United States is like. Well, I didn't say a word. And so then he was talking about the bride price. He got on the bride price. The bride price is going to be very high, as if I cared. And he got it up to $10,000 was going to be the bride price, which was probably a lot of money to them for a bride price, I don't know. But anyway, then he just wouldn't let it go. And I know this is what happened in January because I looked up when Eid al-Fitr was. Now, the Ramadan is when the 40 days when the Muslims have a fast. They don't drink or eat any water or food from sunup to sundown. And believe me, it's very difficult in that heat. But that's what they do. So at the end of the 40 days, they celebrate Eid al-Fitr. Now it's called different things in different countries. But this is a huge celebration. And next week I will show you some of the things that happen at Eid al-Fitr. But this one I'm talking about is that any Muslim family that can afford it slaughters a goat in this part of the world anyway. They slaughter a goat and they divide it among their friends. Well, on that morning, a fourth of a goat was brought by one of their servants and delivered to our kitchen door. Aliyu was in seventh heaven. Oh my goodness, you were so honored to think that anybody would bring you a fourth of a goat. So anyway, what was we to do? We had to keep it. But I don't remember what happened to it. I probably gave it to the servants. But anyway, then it was just shortly after that, right before Mary's birthday, when I came into the, oh, no, excuse me, that's wrong. It was not long after that when I came into the club, and he was sitting in the bar, and the whole bar was filled with all these people. And he says, well, have you made up your mind? And I said, yes, I have. Wasim can marry Mary, or they become betrothed, but Wasim has to turn Roman Catholic.
Whoa.
You should have seen the effect in that room. It was, everybody was putting their hands over their, because they didn't want to snicker and laugh out loud. I mean, I didn't know it was going to have this effect. Boy, did it ever. He left that bar. They said his face had changed to a different color, and we never heard a word about it again. Now, the soil around where we lived in Nigeria was laterite, which is red color, and it got, that's our Thomas, our driver, and he was a very stubborn man. But anyway, Earl told him to clean the car inside and out. He said, it's so full of laterite and it's dirty and everything, just clean the car. And he said, inside and out? And Earl said, yes. So we went in to eat our lunch. He cleaned the car inside and out with a hose. Earl came out and he was beside himself. He didn't even know what to say. He said, how do you dry a car out? Well, in that heat, it didn't take only a few days. But anyway, the gauges were filled with about an inch and a half of water. So he told him to try and get the water, much water out as he could, and we just had to wait till it dried out. But that's what Thomas was like. You're going to hear more about him. Now, we had such a time getting eggs. Nobody had refrigeration except us. I mean, Americans and the English. And so anytime Aliu came to work, he was supposed to stop and get eggs. Well, most of the eggs were rotten because they'd sat in the heat too long. I mean, you can imagine how fast they got spoiled. So we decided, well, how hard is it to raise eggs? Chickens, and get eggs. I mean, neither one of us knew. But we thought we'd try it. And so we told Aliu to go out, we gave him the money, told him to go out, buy the chickens, buy some baskets and boxes and things, and we'll put them in. Behind our bedroom was a little porch. It didn't have screens on your doors or anything, it was just steps. And so he brought all of them, and they were Rhode Island Reds, the chickens. I even knew that Rhode Island Reds were United States. So anyway, we were surprised by that. And so we started in the chicken business, and we didn't get very many eggs. It was really a failure. And we figured probably somebody was taking the eggs, and it was probably Aliu, because before that, I had bought a great big amount of rice. I can't remember how many pounds it was. But in a little over a week, a third of it was gone. Now you only need a cup of rice to feed a family. So anyway, I talked to him about it. I said, the rice there's too much gone. We haven't used that much rice. He said, you don't lock the door, madam. So Earl and the neighbors convinced me, if you don't want to be feeding his family, you've got to lock the pantry door. I didn't want to have to do it, but I had to do it. So anyway, I figured he probably took the eggs too. So, because Aliu was real wild guy, and Aliu was not. So anyway, one day they came to me and they told me that a cobra was coming. Now, one of the things we had the gardener do was pull all the grass out of the yard, because we did not want the kids going out and getting bit by a viper or some other snake. I mean, they'd see a big one, but vipers were little, some of them. and they're one of the most poisonous snakes in the world. So we had them pull all the grass out, and so anyway, they got their machetes out, and they knew that the cobra was coming, because behind our house then, towards the school, was this, what they called the bush. And it was tall, real tall grass, 8 or 10 feet tall. And so they'd see the cobra coming up like this, and he'd look to see if he was coming in the right direction. So they kept track of him, they knew he was coming. And they got their machetes out, and as soon as he wiggled past the grass, they cut off his head. So we didn't have to worry about the cobra, but they said we did, because both of them agreed that if you didn't burn the cobra's head, he would come to life the next day with a new head. Now, we knew that wasn't true, but you don't argue with it. You just, all right, burn the head. So they got this little fire going, and they put the head in there. Well, the fire attracted Tom and Mike, our 2 boys, and they came out and they started throwing the sticks around and running with them, you know, and they caught the bush on fire. Well, it spread just like lightning, and Ollie ran and took all the clothes off the clotheslines of the neighbors, and I was so glad they didn't have screens. He threw the clothes in the windows and went from, you know, all those 3 houses there, and he got all their clothes off the line. Well, there were more than 3, because there were 2 this way and 3 that way. So there were 5 houses. And Dolly got the hose, and he was squirting the water around. So that's the story of the eggs and the cobra. And that's exactly what they look like. Except that some of them have a pink throat. They're really pretty. Now, one of the things that happened, one of the Peace Corps men came to us, and he told us that he had been having the priest, when he came every other week, he came every other Sunday, or Saturday, and stayed till Sunday. And he had been staying with him. Now this Peace Corps guy was one of these ones that went native. The Peace Corps didn't like that, but what were they to do? He turned, so he was living more like a Nigerian, and this happened in other countries too. Then he was an American, and they thought that didn't show well for the U.S. But anyway, that's what he did, and so I can't imagine what kind of food he had or what kind of bed he had, the priest. But anyway, the Peace Corps kid, I don't remember his name, man, asked him if we'd take care of him. And we said, of course. So Father Galule came to our house, and we really hit it off. We liked him so much. They were St. Patrick's fathers from Ireland, and we got to know most of them, and they became good friends. They even came to the United States to visit us, because they'd be asked by their
Superior.
well, yeah, the superior, where they were, if they'd come and, collect money in the United States. They said, yes, as long as we can go to Wisconsin. And then they come and see us. And so anyway, he stayed with us, and he loved our food. He could not get over our food. He said, you were having spaghetti tonight? Isn't that Italian? And we said, yeah, it is. And so we told him about all these different foods we ate. They just couldn't believe it. They had never heard of such thing. And I said, well, we live in a country that's all different people. So we learned how, to eat their food. So anyway, he told us that they had a piggery in Minna. Minna was, let's see, it's right here. And here's Vida, and here's Kaduna and Kano. So anyway, Minna was not far away, and So anyway, we thought, well, that'd be great, we could go and get, they said the pigs were raised very well, you know, it was a good operation. And that they would totally clean it and everything, and it'd be really good, we could come and get one. All we'd have to do is tell them when. Well, we didn't have a phone, we didn't have TV, we didn't have newspapers, we didn't have a telephone. I mean, we had nothing. I mean, we did without a lot. But anyway, we got word to them, we'd tell them on Sunday that we were gonna come on Wednesday and the pig would be ready. And so, Minna, even though it's so close to Beta, they could have a piggery because it was not as Muslim as we were. And so we contacted the Morgans. They lived 3 blocks the other way from the club. And he was a USAID man. That's Dina and Jack. And he was a USAID ag man, so we thought he'll know something about pigs. He didn't know much. And Earl thought very confident that he could butcher the pig because he worked his way through college in his uncle's sausage and meat company. So we went and we were going to get the pig. Different things happened when I was going to get these pigs, but I'll tell you this one. We went to get the pig and it was very nicely done. 2 men came carrying it, and they set the pig down, and the one guy, his hands were all full of pig fat, and he grabbed Earl's camera because Earl took a picture of it. And he held it up like this, and he started backing up, and Earl tried to get the camera, and he wouldn't give it to him. Well, then people heard this commotion, and his bosses came out and told him to give back the camera. No, his friends told him, his family came, they told him no. So finally had gathered the police. So the police came, and they told him to give back the camera, and no, he wouldn't do it. So the policeman said, okay, we'll go to court. Now I'm sure this was a Sharia court. We dealt with the Sharia court a couple times. They were always in our favor. So anyway, they went to the court, and I walked around the town some with the kids. And they walked into the court, and the judge heard what had happened, and he says, give him the camera. That was the end of it. And then he told Earl, he says, give him 3 shillings. So that was the end of the thing. So then when we got home, they still had to butcher the pig, you know, and Earl knew how to cut it into recognizable pieces. And so they did that. Oh my God, it was a long day. And here's Ali, another picture of Aliyu. That is, how come that's here? I was going to tell you about, in the meantime, the reason that we could butcher the pig and butcher the chickens was because we sent a big crate from the United States. And one of the things we put in the crate was a small freezer chest. And so we had room for the chickens when we slaughtered them. Did I tell you about when we slaughtered the chickens, we gave up on the eggs and chickens? The ovary ducts were filled with just lines of yolks. So we knew, we were pretty sure. But anyway, there was this other thing. We had places to put the pork meat in the freezer. And I also sent a mixer and all these blenders and all this stuff we use in the kitchen. I thought, how am I going to get along without it? So I sent it. And Aliyu, I taught him how to use all this. And anytime we had anybody came to the house, he would get out the mixer. And I'd say, oh, we're going to have a nice dessert. Because he loved showing off that he knew how to run these machines. And so, let me us. Like I said, he was very good with things, and he was even better with making things. One of the first things we had him do was he learned how to make pizza. And because he knew, all I had to do is I said, just make some yeast dough that doesn't rise a lot. And he knew how to do that. And so he learned how to make all these things, and then I taught him how to make all of the stuff. I mean, he knew how to make macaroni and cheese and any rice dishes and meats and meatloafs. And he learned how to make 7-minute frosting, chocolate frosting, chocolate cakes. He learned how to make raised donuts and dip them in icing. He knew all this stuff, so he learned all these things. So when we left, I imagine he got a very good job because he knew how to make everything. Now, one of the things that the kids noticed was that the cat food was missing. And the kids were very concerned about it. It really wasn't cat food. Nigeria didn't have cat food. They didn't make food for cats. They hardly could feed themselves. So the kids watched, and they said they thought Dolly Yu was taking the food. It was cans of some kind of, I think it was probably liver, but it was for people. We fed it to the cat. And so we told him that we would give him a raise, and we had to give Dolly Yu a raise too. And then we said we'd keep the money that he wanted to go. He wanted to go to nursing school. That's what he was doing. He was saving his money and eating the cat. So he went. We told him we'd take care of the money. We'd put it in the bank, and nobody, it'd be safe there from him too. And so it was a tradition in Nigeria that any parent, if a kid got any money in any way, they could come and ask for it. Well, so the mother came. She lived quite far away. She came and she brought an interpreter with her. And she told us, the interpreter told us that she wanted the money. Well, Earl and I said, we're not going to give it to him. And so we said it's for his education, and we believe in education. And he would do very well in nursing school. So you're not getting the money. So she just left. She didn't say, what could she say? So when we were back in the United States a little while, I got a letter from Dolly. And he told me, he said, I thought you were stark raving mad. I thought you were just crazy. All those things you had me doing. Bleaching things and boiling water and sanitizing this and that. And he says, you know what? I'm 1 year ahead of all the students in nursing school. So he was very pleased. Now here's Earl. This is why we went to Nigeria after all, was for Earl to teach in the Teachers College. And this is his co-worker, the Nigerian, and his name was Hamadu. Mohammed. No. I can't remember all these names. It was Mala Hamadu. And he came to the United States like many, hundreds. My daughter and I talked about it last night. We said it was probably thousands of Nigerians that came to the University of Wisconsin for school to get advanced degrees. So we felt very good about that. And he was one of them. He came and got a doctorate at Madison. Now, one of the things that happened at the school is the Americans did not agree with the philosophy of especially the headmaster. They didn't agree with the philosophy of some of the teachers, but especially the headmaster. Now, and they called them boys. Earl didn't like that at all because he said they were boys when they came there, but by the time they left, they were men. And because some of them were married. And so anyway, this one man went home with his box. That was what they called their suitcase. He went home with his box, and another boy, student, said that his box was missing. Oh, the principal said, that's easy to solve. One went home, he took the stolen box with him. That's it. And he was convinced of it. And he said he'll get 25 whippings, 25 whacks when he gets back in the main square. Well, the American teacher said, no, that's not going to happen. He said, it is going to happen. I've already told the emir, who is the king of that region, I already told the emir he has his whipping boy ready. As soon as he gets here, he's going down to the market and we're giving him 25 lashes. Oh, excuse me. And they said, no, it's not. So he reported this to the emir and he said, you know, they said they're not going to let this happen. The emir says, well, you know, let's just see. So it went on and on and on, and days went by, and the principal said, all right, what's going on? And the emir said, well, you've calmed down a lot. And he said, the Americans are our guests, and we're not going to go against what they want. And he said, so the boy is not getting the lashes. And he just waited until he just calmed down, and then he just gave his opinion. So we thought, well, at least the emir knows something. This is the college here with the boys up there in the upper left. That's Earl. He started the basketball team. So then the other guys started a basketball team. Most of them are, well, some of them are teachers. Most of them are Peace Corps kids, men. And this is the one right up here in the dark hair. He's a banker and from England. And he loved being with the Americans. And he even got a buzz cut. I gave it to him. And then here's the boys when they first arrived. That's how they look. They're kind of immature and everything. So, and then this is just them lining up in the corridor for some reason. And this is them teaching, and it shows Earl there at the overhead, right there. Using audio visuals. That was one of the things they wanted them to teach them, how to use things and examples and audio visuals. Because one of the teachers, Earl said, would give the students their book and you'd say, okay, chapter 3 and 4, read that, and you'll have a test in a week. That was all the instruction they got. So that's what they wanted to change, so that they got to be, they know their subject better. And then here's boys, students in doing some kind of work, marching or something. They did all kinds of things.
Rita, did your husband have familiarity with the local language, or did they all speak English?
English is the official language of Nigeria.
Okay.
Because they couldn't agree, when they got independence, they couldn't agree on any one of the Hausa or Yoruba or any of those languages, so they chose English. So that was not a lot of people didn't speak it, but enough did. And even Aliyu, our cook, spoke enough and he could read and write it. And so he could write down those recipes, just words he put down. And I'd go through it with him a couple times, and then he'd know it. Now, January 15th, the coup happened. You heard about goes to war? Well, January 15th happened to be our Mary's birthday, and she was going to be 5 years old. And this was going to be a big birthday for her. And we had planned a big party, and part of it was in the pool, and part of it was at our house, and she was so looking forward to it. Well, on January 15th, the head leaders in the military, the head officers in the military. They were all educated at Sandhurst, England's West Point. So they really knew what they were doing. And they had it totally planned out. And they moved into, they killed a lot more than 4 leaders, but now it's officially 4 leaders. They moved into the leaders of the North, the South, the East, and the West. Whomever they were sleeping with at night at 2:30 in the morning. Now Muslims can have 4 wives, so whoever was unlucky enough to be sleeping with them, they hauled them out and shot them against the wall. And of course, they shot a lot of people on the way into their houses, so it was a horrible, horrible, tragic mistake. Because then the army took over the country, and they killed this man here, Al-Haji, that means he's been to Mecca, Sir Ahmadu Bello, Knight of the British Empire. He had gone, Queen Elizabeth knighted him. Sardano of Sokoto, that means that he was the head of the whole Muslim religion in the country. And he was also premier of northern Nigeria. And they killed him. But you can imagine, it was a horrible thing to do. And the army started killing others in the army. And this went on for months. The thing is that everything would have gotten worse, except that nobody had guns in Nigeria at that time. Only the army had guns. The police didn't even have guns. And it was like we always said back then, it was like killing JFK and the Pope in one person. Well, now we'd say it's like killing Queen Elizabeth II and the Pope in one person. So the population, the Muslims, just say, we're biding our time. We're going to see what goes on, and we're biding our time. Well, one of the things that the NNTEP wanted us to do was send our older children to boarding schools. So we chose Beirut, Lebanon, where the American Community School was. We knew a teacher that taught in that school, so we thought it was a good place for her to be. And Beirut, Lebanon at the time was called the Paris of the East. So it was very high thought of. So here she is, ready to take off for Lebanon. And a family was going to see, that we was going to take her into Beirut, and she was being met by the school, somebody from the school. Well, so she went on September 30th. One of the things we wanted, Sam was going to take us, and he was the best driver we had. And he said he wouldn't go. We said, what do you mean you won't go? He said, I'm not going. And we didn't know what to do. The head of the place, everybody started talking to him. Finally, he said, well, it's not safe. October 1st is Independence Day, and believe me, there's going to be trouble. So we had to listen to him. He was smart, and he knew what he was saying. So he agreed to go if we obeyed him, not us. We weren't in charge. So we agreed to go. After all, she had to get to Lebanon. So we went up to her on the plane in Kano. And then we turned around and we were headed back to Kaduna because we were going to stay in one of those apartments. And we got into the next town, Zaria. It was a big town. It had a university there, a big university. And he said, there's trouble ahead. He could see it ahead. And he took side roads and he got us back to Kaduna safely. The next morning, I don't know, every Muslim man was involved in it or not, but enough of them were. And they took machetes and they entered the airport, the hospitals, the schools, the stores, everywhere, the post offices. See, the people were well educated because they were educated by missionaries. And so they had good jobs. And they moved in there and they killed every Igbo they could find. And of course, we were stuck in Kaduna for about, I don't know how long it was. We didn't go out and take any pictures. It wasn't safe. But we could hear the trouble going on outside. And this is the picture we got off the internet. Those other pictures were ours. But this is one we got off the internet. This is why they couldn't go to war right away. Nobody had guns. They had to practice with wood until they got the guns. So the next talk is going to be on October 3rd, 1 week from today at 2 o'clock. And I'll talk more about our family and different things. You'll hear a lot more stuff, believe me.
And I better see that or something.
How long were you there?
2 years.
A year?
2 years.
2 years.
So we're into 1966 because we went to Beirut in September 30th of 1966 and we arrived in 65. So I'll fill in that other part. You missed all communities, so I'll fill in as much as I can. An hour and 50. Oh, who has questions?
How old were your kids when you went over there?
He was 12, Tom was 10, Mike was 11, and Mary was 4 and a half.
Wow.
Mike was 7. You had been 7. He was 6, and he was going to be 7. And we arrived June 30th. He was going to be 7 in August.
That is a huge job.
You can't imagine.
Yeah, that is amazing. Well, thank you.
That's it.
Did you get done your
Any other questions?
How did your husband decide to do this? Or did you, the two of you, how did you decide that you do this?
Well, I wasn't for it at all. But we put it up to a family vote. And the kids all voted yes, and Earl voted yes. He was going to start a program at Nicolay International Studies. And so he was very interested in other countries, international. He ran a great big program at the International Studies.
That was such a commitment for you with 4 children.
Yeah.
I mean, and then did you have to sell a house or
Well, we rented our house.
rented it out?
Yeah, it was snapped up right away.
So, was it
It was in-
lucrative enough or was it more for experience?
Well, they paid all of our way of getting there and back. They paid for all of our health care. The Ford Foundation paid for our electricity, our rent. They gave each child a great big stipend where they could buy, we would go to a bookstore and they'd run with the boxes because we had so much money to spend.
Oh, really?
And they doubled his salary from Nicolay.
Really?
So we figured we could save almost all of that.
Okay. And when you look back, do you think it was a wonderful experience or a learning experience?
Well, it was very much a learning experience, and it was very much a learning experience for our kids. Except when our kids talked about it at schools, they didn't talk about it again.
Oh,
The other kids didn't like it.
Oh, really?
And our son, Tom, who was, he must have been 13 when we got home. He was in school in Glendale, and he had a first-year teacher for history. And she started telling him about Muslims. And he raised his hand and he says, no, that's not right. And he started telling about it. And she told him he was a liar. Well, I had words with her. But I mean, it was, people just wouldn't believe it. One woman in Glendale asked us if we drove there. So, yeah, it was profitable. We built a new house when we got home.
Did you? Wow, what a commitment.
Well, it was a big commitment.
And then the malaria with your son.
Are you gonna talk about Mary's wish?
No, Lee.
Oh, Lee was, you didn't give us those details.
Well, I don't, there are
Are you
no
saving
details. They just get really sick, and then they take a lot of chloroquine and they get better.
But you almost thought she was gonna die.
Well, I didn't think so, the doctor did.
Wow.
But I thought, he doesn't know what he's talking about, he's never taken care of an American kid before. He doesn't know how strong they are.
Oh,
So I didn't really think much of it.
Rita, when you were talking about the massacre that you just missed, how much did you miss that by? Was that hours or a day?
Well, it was
What
overnight.
What?
It was overnight. We took her at June 30th and July 1st, we took her September 30th and October 1st is when they moved into the airport. But they were also killing everybody in
In the neighborhood, huh?
in Kaduna, where we were.
So how did you get away from that, do you think? They avoided you because it was,
Well, we waited in the apartment, and of course, you know, the police were watching our house. They weren't after us. Nobody was after us.
oh, okay.
The only way we could have got hurt is if we got in the middle of something. And we went out to get food once in Kaduna, and we were on our way back, and the police let us through, and then they started tear gassing all the people. So I put the kids down on the floor, and the tear gas came in the car, but I mean, we didn't get hurt by it. But we heard all the stuff going on.
Oh, my, that was something.
Yeah. Well, we go through a lot more.
Are you sorry you went?
No, I'm not.
But
We saw all that, we experienced all of it, and it was all very interesting, really. And now when I look at the internet, I look up everything I put on here. I look up on the internet what it's doing today, and they talk about the progress that Nigeria has made is astounding. In Bida, our little town where we lived, and had that teachers college, and a lot of the kids didn't even go to school. They have a great big engineering school there now. Teaches all kinds of different engineering. So they put a lot into education, and they were able to do that because we started.
The influence of your group.
Yeah, and the University of Wisconsin really profited from it greatly. Like I said, thousands of people came from Nigeria, and many of them. That was one thing the Ford Foundation did. Then, if they wrote a good grant or whatever, they would give them money to come to the University of Wisconsin. Because they knew the University of Wisconsin. They knew that it must be just a common word there in Nigeria.
and I think there still are a lot of Nigerians.
Well, they still
in
come.
Madison.
Well, it is. They have too.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're still coming.